In the summer of 1528, a strange and terrifying illness began to move across England with a speed that defied understanding. It did not creep slowly through villages or linger for weeks like the plague. It struck suddenly, often without warning, and within hours, the healthy were reduced to the dying. By nightfall, entire households could be gone. Fear spread faster than the sickness itself, as communities watched people collapse in the streets, drenched in sweat, trembling, and unable to survive even a single day. This was not a new disease. It had appeared before, decades earlier, leaving behind confusion and unanswered questions. But its return in 1528 was different. It seemed more aggressive, more unpredictable, and far more widespread. Those who witnessed it struggled to describe what they were seeing. There were no clear patterns, no reliable treatments, and no agreement among physicians about its cause. What remained was a growing sense that something deeply unusual was unfolding across the country. England in the early 16th century was a nation in transition. The reign of Henry VIII was reshaping political and religious life, while towns and trade networks were expanding. Movement between regions had become more frequent, and with it came increased vulnerability to disease. Yet even in a period accustomed to outbreaks, this illness stood apart. Unlike the plague, which was widely feared but somewhat understood, this condition behaved in ways that confounded both scholars and ordinary people. The first signs were often subtle but quickly escalated. A person might feel a sudden chill, followed by intense sweating, dizziness, and a rapid heartbeat. Within a short span of time, these symptoms intensified. The body weakened, breathing became labored, and in many cases, death followed within hours. There was rarely time to prepare, rarely time to seek help, and almost never time for recovery if the illness took hold severely. What made the sweating sickness particularly alarming was its unpredictability. It did not follow the familiar patterns of other epidemics. Some regions were struck heavily while others nearby remained untouched. In certain towns, it seemed to favor individuals in the prime of life, men and women who were otherwise strong and active. This challenged the expectations of the time, when many diseases were believed to target the very young or the elderly more severely. As reports spread from town to town, anxiety deepened. Merchants altered their routes, travelers avoided certain areas, and local authorities attempted to impose measures to limit movement. However, the speed of the illness made containment extremely difficult. By the time a community recognized the threat, it was often already too late to prevent further spread. Medical understanding in 1528 was shaped by long-standing traditions rooted in classical theories. Physicians often interpreted disease through the balance of bodily humors or the influence of environmental factors such as air quality. Some attributed the sweating sickness to miasma, or corrupted air, believing that certain weather conditions or seasonal changes played a role. Others suggested it might be linked to poor sanitation or overcrowded living conditions, though these explanations did not fully account for its rapid and selective impact. Treatments varied widely and were largely ineffective. Some physicians recommended keeping the patient warm and avoiding exposure to cold air, believing that sweating was a necessary process that should not be interrupted. Others advised rest and minimal disturbance. In many cases, however, the illness progressed too quickly for any intervention to make a meaningful difference. The lack of consistent results only reinforced the sense of helplessness surrounding the outbreak. The social consequences were immediate and profound. Families were forced to isolate themselves, sometimes abandoning those who fell ill out of fear of contagion. Work in fields and workshops slowed or stopped entirely in affected areas. Markets became quieter, and the normal rhythms of daily life were disrupted. The sudden loss of individuals in key roles, laborers, artisans, and local leaders, created gaps that were not easily filled. At the same time, the psychological impact was equally significant. The speed of the disease left little room for mourning or preparation. Death, when it came, was abrupt and often unexpected. Communities struggled to maintain a sense of order as rumors circulated and uncertainty grew. In the absence of clear explanations, people searched for meaning in the patterns they observed, even when those patterns were inconsistent or misleading. The outbreak did not remain confined to England. It eventually crossed into parts of continental Europe, including regions of the Holy Roman Empire and beyond. However, its behavior outside England was less consistent, and in many areas, it did not produce the same level of devastation. This uneven spread added another layer of mystery, raising questions about whether local conditions or population differences influenced its severity. Despite its reach, the sweating sickness never established itself as a permanent or recurring presence in the same way as other diseases of the period. After the wave of 1528 subsided, it gradually disappeared again, leaving behind a limited record and many unanswered questions. There were no definitive conclusions about its cause, and no lasting medical framework to explain its behavior. Historians and researchers have continued to study the sweating sickness in the centuries since, attempting to identify its origins and characteristics. Various theories have been proposed, ranging from viral infections to environmental toxins. Some have suggested it may have been related to diseases carried by rodents or influenced by climatic conditions. However, the evidence remains incomplete, and no single explanation has been universally accepted. What can be established with greater certainty is the impact it had on those who lived through it. The outbreak of 1528 revealed the limits of contemporary knowledge and the vulnerability of societies facing sudden and poorly understood threats. It also demonstrated how quickly fear and disruption could spread alongside disease, shaping behavior and decision-making in ways that extended beyond the immediate health crisis. In the broader context of history, the sweating sickness occupies a unique position. It does not fit neatly into the patterns established by more familiar epidemics. Its rapid onset, brief duration, and eventual disappearance distinguish it from diseases that persisted and evolved over time. This makes it both difficult to categorize and important to study, as it challenges assumptions about how diseases emerge and spread. The experience of 1528 also highlights the importance of observation and record-keeping. Although accounts from the period are limited, they provide valuable insights into how people perceived and responded to the outbreak. These records, while sometimes inconsistent, form the basis for modern attempts to understand what occurred. They remind us that even in the absence of complete knowledge, documentation can preserve critical information for future generations. Economically, the outbreak contributed to temporary instability in affected regions. Trade slowed, labor shortages emerged, and local production declined. While these effects were not long-lasting on a national scale, they were deeply felt in individual communities. Recovery depended on the return of stability and the gradual rebuilding of daily routines. Politically, the event did not lead to major structural changes, but it reinforced the need for greater awareness of public health risks. Although the concept of organized public health systems was still far in the future, experiences like the sweating sickness contributed to a growing recognition that disease could influence the stability and functioning of society as a whole. In examining the sweating sickness today, it is important to approach the subject with caution. The limited evidence and lack of definitive conclusions mean that many aspects remain uncertain. While modern science offers tools that were unavailable in the 16th century, it cannot fully reconstruct every detail of past events. This uncertainty is not a weakness but a reflection of the complexity of historical investigation. The story of the sweating sickness is ultimately one of sudden disruption and unresolved questions. It serves as a reminder that not all threats leave behind clear explanations or lasting patterns. Some appear briefly, alter the course of lives and communities, and then fade, leaving only fragments of evidence and the memory of their impact. In 1528, for those who experienced it, the sweating sickness was not an abstract phenomenon or a subject of academic debate. It was an immediate and overwhelming reality that reshaped daily life and challenged existing beliefs. Its return brought fear, confusion, and loss, but it also exposed the resilience of communities facing uncertainty. As the outbreak receded, England continued to move forward, carrying with it the lessons and questions left behind. The sweating sickness did not become a permanent part of its history, but its brief and intense presence ensured that it would not be forgotten. It stands as a case study in the unpredictable nature of disease and the enduring importance of seeking understanding, even when answers remain incomplete.